In Minecraft, planning is very important for a builder. Now, how do you plan exactly? Well, this is what this video is trying to tell you, at least. This is done by planning. Now, how do you plan exactly? Well, you want to start off with a few basic shapes. Okay, we've got the first shape out of the way, and now we add a bit more because there's not quite enough depth to it. Maybe we could add a tower of some sorts. Right over here, maybe on the corner. The corner of the build is always a great place to start. Believe it or not, walls can help a lot to really kind of change your shape. Like, you can place a wall like this and it just rounds it off a bit, if I could say so myself, and just gives it a bit more of a rounded feel and keeps it nice and compact. Well, we add yet another shape, maybe a little side building or a little bit of an extension, which can come off a little bit. Now, this is quite a small one, but you could add a little bit of a roof like so, just to get that shape kind of going and just give a bit more fluff to your building. With that, we've got a few basic shapes ready for our building. You can extend a bit more. If I were to extend this, it would be quite a bit higher, almost like somewhere over here. There we go. There's a bit of a tower, and you can kind of see what I am kind of imagining. Maybe I could do a walkway coming over, or I could add a few other shapes. Maybe like an outhouse could work quite nicely. Maybe what you want to do is just get more and more shapes going so that you can kind of pick what you really want. I've played a bit more around and I've gotten yet another shape. You might notice that it's a lot bigger, but that's what you kind of get when you play around. When you go bigger, you've got the possibility to add a whole lot more shapes and just experiment around more and have fun. And I will say I do like this shape more. And what you want to do now is to add a roof designer over. Personally, I am not that confident in my roofs, and I do experiment a lot with. That's also why I've got my other house where I did like 3 different roof designs into one building, which I've done in a previous video. However, I'm pretty pleased with this. It will not be what I'll be using for my cozy humble abode. This is what I've been cooking to a certain extent. So I've got my main kind of little building over here. I'm going to add a roof, a sloped roof, and maybe a few windows coming out with a tower, a little off to the side part. Maybe I could put a fireplace in here, or maybe just a little building extension. Got a shed over here, some retaining walls for a footpath or some farms, all here on this magnificent floating rock. And I could add quite a few details with like hanging plants and everything. However, that's only the last step. This is the first step, the planning stage, and it's so crucial. You can't really miss this planning stage. Now that I've done my planning, it's time for me to add basic colors, like very basic. For it's the time where I select what colors I want to use for my build. And when I've got that base color finalized, I can work on a color palette, and then from that point on, I can actually build and add all the little details and make this a lovely little humble abode. So I first started off to just color in the retaining walls and the rest of the parts of the build. I feel like it's very important for you to just start coloring it in initially to see how the colors work together instead of texturizing your build immediately. Otherwise you might have a mistake and then you have to retexturize all over again, and just so much wasted time, and it's not that encouraging as a builder to rip out all your hard work, where if you just color it with basic coloring before texturing, you can make changes and see what works, and it's really much more encouraging to build and much more fun, in my opinion. Here I added a basic little extension instead of having a house combat. For what I just decided to go for walkway. For my roof design, I wanted it to be a low and flat roof. I had a bit of trouble initially where I just had this type of angular one from all sides, and then I just changed it to a bit more basic shape where it just ramps up. I had a bit of a problem of the roof showing through, as you can see, but what I did is I just thickened the border of the dark oak planks which is around, and finally I could finally start texturized the roof, giving it a bit of wear and tear, which I think is quite nice. Also start texturizing the barn with red pieces and everything. And yeah, I can't state it enough how important it is to just get the main basic color before adding all the little details. You can add the texturizing little details later, like I'm doing here with my pathway and with a little garden out front and out back. It's so important, I just can't overstate it, to work in layers. First off in the basic shapes which we planned beforehand, and then just coloring it in before texturizing and adding all those little details. Here I'm just adding the floor, which is going to be followed by a few small details like the kitchen and doors. You can't forget the doors, of course you can't. And here in the shed I started to fill it in with oak barrels, and I decided to use a bit of coral by placing trapdoors along and breaking the dirt block to place water to keep the coral hydrated and colourful. And I feel like you can do it as well. It's such a nice little detail, fish or something. Also decided to add a few pots for decoration, and of course you have to have candles. Candles are such a nice thing that has been added into the game. Here you can see my stove top and my kitchen. I wanted to have a piece of cloth where you can like dry stuff, and you can just place a banner and then have a stair going at the bottom part. With a roof, a simple slab and trapdoor design, which just gives a little bit more headroom than logs and slabs. I decided to just make a simple bed, not something too complicated. I took a bit of inspiration from my bunk bed, which I had in my previous video with my bunk bed tutorial. Here in the tower I just added a little cubby hole with a painting and a study area now in front of a window. I used stained grey glass, I believe, for my windows, and used some trapdoors, some copper trapdoors, slightly aged, just fit with the doors and just give a bit of aging. And yeah, so important to have shutters, such a nice detail. Little railing also goes a long way for the detail. There I decided to make a little bit of a wall and a washing station and rack as well. And here's a finished build. I hope you liked it. I'm pretty pleased with this. And that is how you work your way from just a basic design to a complete build. And here's the final few details. I hope you enjoyed it. And that is how you can build, plan and make cute little houses in your Minecraft world. I hope you have a nice day for it, and I'll see you most certainly next time.